And we're live. Welcome, everyone. Jesse's laughing at me because I was trying to do the intro. And we are going to talk about the Eternals trailer that just came out. And surprisingly enough, didn't have a lot of people excited. Well, surprisingly enough, Jesse, not a lot of people know about the Eternals.
Who?
I said Marvel's kind of trying to go with the Guardians of the Galaxy approach and taking this group of heroes that nobody really knows outside of, diehard comic fans. And even, honestly, the Guardians are probably more well known than the Eternals are. So this is definitely, gonna test how Marvel fans feel about that.
And if you don't know, Jesse is going to be our Eternals expert here. Because he knows a little bit. Because let's face it, guys, none of you know who the Eternals are. I saw the comments and people were already typing stuff like, "Oh, Thena said this." Ikaris be like, "Stop pretending that you know these characters. You don't. Even the die-hard comic book fans don't know the characters. So stop pretending. No one believes you." But we have one person here who is our expert. But well, you tell me, Jesse. You don't. I'm gonna say that you don't know much about the Eternals yourself, but you have read some issues of them, and that's gonna be our bare minimum of what we need to call you an expert on them, since no one else knows who they are.
Well, the Eternals have really, over the years, have had, I believe, 3 comic book series. Like their original debut back when Jack Kirby created them in 1976, and I believe they had one, and it was in the mid 2000s. They had a run, and then just this last year, or it's still going on, they had one. So they've not been around in their own comics. Most of the characters that I know are from them appearing in other people's comics, like Sersei, who Gemma Chan is playing in the movie, was part of the Avengers, and she's probably the most well known that I know. And then some of the other ones have appeared, like Thena, which is Angelina Jolie's character, has appeared in some other comics like the Avengers, and also Heroes for Hire, which is where I've read about them back in the 90s. So, but basically, the Eternals are created by the beings called the Celestials, which, if you watch the MCU only, you would probably recognize them as from Guardians of the Galaxy, the giant celestial creatures like the Nowhere, that's the head of a celestial. And then they show some of the flashbacks with them holding the Power Stone and all that. So they came to Earth and created all these, races, which is the Eternals are one of the races that they created.
And also,
along with
I think in the MCU, Ego, so Star-Lord's father, is a Celestial, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that is correct. In the movies, Ego is a yes. So they came to Earth, experimented on the humans, so they made 3 different species. The other one, what are called the Deviants, which are essentially kind of just like deformed-looking people, monsters-looking people, which is who they say is going to be the enemy in the movie. But as we've seen from the trailer, there was no specific enemy shown in this. It's being only a teaser. I guess if a regular trailer, they might show some of that.
So there are 2 species, the Eternals and the Deviants, and the Deviants are supposed to look like the monsters.
Yeah, so the Eternals are like the godlike looking, perfect human looking people, and then the Deviants are like these kind of deformed, kind of looking people.
Okay.
With different.
Got it.
Yeah.
This is new territory for me. That's a new one.
Yeah.
I want to say, I guess, their history is very similar to the Inhumans, and that's not by an accident, because you probably remembered this from a few years ago, but Kevin Feige wanted to do the Inhumans movie instead, but then he changed his mind, apparently, from what I'm hearing, because of the TV series that came out on ABC about the Inhumans, and it was a flop. So I guess Kevin Feige didn't want anything to do with that, maybe for the better, because that trailer was awful. But at the same time, because of that decision, I mean, I think he could have rebooted them, honestly, because we had so many Spider-Man. I think Inhumans just could have been, I guess they're too new of an IP, but I think he should have rebooted them and just given us Inhumans, because you have much more recognizable characters like Black Bolt, Medusa, who else is there? Like Triton, if I remember correctly, Gorgon,
Lockjaw the dog,
Karnak. You have so many cool characters, that I myself know a lot more, and not just because Marvel just started promoting them in the comics 5 years ago because they thought the movies were going to come out before it was Marvel Entertainment making the TV shows versus Marvel Studios making the movies. And now it is just Kevin Feige. He's the head of everything at Marvel, even the comic books, so you guys know who to complain to. Obviously runs everything, so now he's also doing the TV shows. I mean, he's greenlighting them and stuff. So that's, I think, why we don't have Inhumans.
Well, I have heard some things kind of like what you're saying that they kind of like are using this in the spot they would have put the Inhumans. I thought that they kind of canned the Humans because they instead made it a show and then it happened to flop, not because it
Yeah.
flopped, but the Inhumans are definitely, at least in I would think in the comic book community, a lot more well known than
Well,
the
definitely.
Eternals. But I guess from an outside perspective, from a general audience, they're probably just as obscure characters.
Okay, I think we can, after that long intro, I think we can get into the trailer.
Let's do it.
Okay, and I'm gonna stop it. So we have this interesting choice of music, The End of the World. And we have, like, what, natives here? What do you think? Like, when I saw these, I mean, I
These
thought they were
are
natives, but from theories online, I heard they're like cave people, cavemen.
they're kind of just showing like a hunter gatherer tribe from just like early humanity kind of, and showing that the Eternals are kind of, this is I guess maybe their first time revealing themselves to the humans, or just kind of making their grand entrance to
Mhm.
these primitive people.
That's kind of weird because I always, like, when I saw this, maybe because I watched Chloe Zhao's the director's movie before, which was also set in modern day and also kind of set in a desert outskirts, and I just thought this was in modern day and those were natives.
Well, supposedly the Eternals, they've been like in hiding, or what I say, they've not. They've been kind of staying out of human
Mm.
affairs. So it
Yeah, we're
makes
gonna
me
get to that.
wonder if. I said this makes me wonder if this particular, like in the entrance they're coming in, if this is before they've kind of like abandoned humanity, so to speak. Because
Okay.
later on the trailer they show them like
Hmm.
helping them grow crops and everything and helping them build like a civilization
Yep.
and stuff. So I wonder if this something happens here, that this could be what's gonna lead them to kind of disappear into hiding.
Makes sense. I
Well,
just
supposedly I say this is supposed to be taking place over, thousands and thousands of years from what I've heard. So we'll be seeing different time periods and leading up to the present day stuff, kind of seeing their history as well.
okay. And there's their ship, obviously. Does that look like that in the comics? Do they have a ship? I don't know.
As far as I've seen, I have not seen their ship in the comics.
Okay.
There's nothing specific anyway. I mean, I could be wrong though. I have not done an expert.
So, who are these two characters?
So here we have, which I guess they're kind of like the main characters of the movie, that they just Ikaris and Sersei. And so I know at least in the comics that Ikaris eventually becomes like the leader of one of the factions on Earth of the Eternals.
Yep.
And so he's kind of like the main character in the mid 2000s run, I believe. And then Cersei is the one that was actually part of the Avengers and has connections to characters like the Black Knight and stuff, that whole storyline, which can get really confusing even when reading it.
Why?
But so she, it's a whole thing with Cersei and Black Knight where they get this bond called I believe I never ever said it out loud, but the Gan Josen, I believe is what it's called, is some kind
Okay.
of like connection between them. So they're kind of like, together as like in a relationship. So those are two of the supposedly the main characters of this kind of like movie, are these two right here, Ikaris and Cersei.
So here she says, "It's beautiful, isn't it?" So I wonder if this is the first time. Well, this it seems like this isn't the first time she's looking at Earth, because she's like,
Well,
"Isn't it
they've
beautiful?" Like I said.
described they've described Cersei as like in the promotional material as the the like human lover. Like she's the one that like advocates for the humans and like wants to help
Okay.
them and stuff like that. So that's makes sense.
Okay. So that's what they're gonna keep true. Now we see them walk through their hallways. As we can see, their interior doesn't look very normal. It's just a bunch of black stuff, and it looks like the prison from Loki. Actually, from Loki. What the heck am I saying? From Thor: The Dark World in the background. Okay, and then this guy is building stuff. Who that? Okay, maybe. Who the heck is
That
she?
is Phastos. That is actually Ajak, which in the
Ajak.
comics is a man. So this is one of the characters that they've decided to gender swap.
And they swap.
And yeah, I believe he was actually, if I remember correctly, yeah, he was. Well, he was actually one of the. I don't know if he was near the top of the leaders of the Eternals. He's kind of like the wise, kind of like advisor person, I suppose, is the best way I could think about it.
Okay.
But this is that character Ajak.
And then this is who? You said
Then we have Phastos, which is kind of like their like
Hephaestus.
a technology builder, inventor type person.
Okay, yeah. He looks chubby. Huh.
And then in the background, I believe that's Sprite, which is like the young, like they're well eternal, but the young one, so to speak, of the group, like the kid, kind of young person that's always young or something.
We have the logo. I really like the music in this part of the trailer. I don't know what to call it. It's like I'm not gonna call it synth. Maybe it is synth music, but I really like it. So we have Cersei looking at like people probably and being very in awe of them. Okay, so this brings me to the question of what the heck are their powers?
Well, that is tricky because they all kind of have some different variances, but generally they all have basically they have the strength, they can levitate and fly really fast and all that. They can create mental illusions, project cosmic energy beams, and some of them can transform object shapes and create things. And I believe Cersei, if I'm not mistaken, she has some kind of elemental something. That's what she was doing with the water.
So this is her, okay. Okay.
Yes. She can transmute matter as well. That is probably what she was doing there.
And now she's with this tribe, probably preparing for some kind of ceremony. I'm assuming from what I'm seeing here.
We have helped them.
Some kind of blade. I have no idea what they're doing. I assume this is Cersei's hand. A lot of hands in this trailer. You'll see a lot of hands. It's a lot of hands shots.
Progress.
It seems to be like they're just kind of like showing them like trying to help this like up and coming tribe out, and this is like them starting to like use their technology and their powers to help them, and then I assume it will probably backfire in some way, and that will lead to them, hiding off for so long.
Okay, that'd be weird. Because right now in the background we hear Selma Hayek, so I guess that's Ajax explaining that they were here all along and all this stuff. But we're gonna get to these. This is a very nice shot. I love this. Is like my favorite shot of the trailer, where Angelina Jolie looks really cool here.
We have helped them progress,
and it looks awesome. I like green, but her headpiece is awful.
She's playing the character Thena, which is one of the more well-known ones.
Is she a... When I hear Thena, I think of like a Diana Prince warrior type.
She is actually named after Athena. She has the same as like all they have the strength, the mental control over her body, so they're immortal. And she has some sonic abilities. and can project cosmic energy from her eyes and hands, and flying and all that good stuff.
So all of them can fly, levitate, and stuff. Okay.
Essentially, that's their general power sets. They all kind of have the similar, but they all have like one little thing that kind of differentiates them, but they all essentially have the same power set.
Help them progress.
So they've helped them progress. That's what they're
I've
saying.
seen them accomplish wonders.
And they've seen them accomplish wonders.
Throughout the years,
This person, Fast One.
Well, this one is called Makari, and yeah, that she is Fast One. That's
it.
about the best I can pull up from that one. Is she's
we
fast.
have never interfered.
Okay,
so that kind of shows them shots. They're in different time frames.
Yeah.
So that showed them in present. Looked like present day London, I believe. So in Sersei, like there's in the past, kind of in that like.
Do you think she's really?
In that city that they created.
Yeah. Do you think they're reliving this, or maybe she's in some, what's the word? Not Danger Room, in X-Men. It's like this.
A simulation.
Yeah. What was it called? Gosh, I forgot. It's like at the end of my tongue. But what if this is like sort of? Yeah, I guess it's like Danger Room, where they can just project stuff because they can, except they can do it on a cosmic level probably. Because look, she's wearing the same outfit throughout many decades, and this is like goes back to what you're saying. She's kind of like the advocate for humanity because she's looking very sad. I don't know why she'd be looking sad, but right now in the background we hear the Sama Hayek saying, "We've helped them," and then we hear the complete opposite, the complete contrast of, "But we didn't help throughout history. We didn't intervene until now." And it's like, what the heck are you talking? You're just contradicting yourself.
That's been like people's like big gripe I've been hearing is like they've been hiding and then they say, we don't intervene, and then now all of a sudden they're saying that something's drawing them out to intervene in human affairs again. But what about all the other things that have happened in this particular universe? What about Thanos? What about Ultron?
Exactly.
What about New York with Loki? Why didn't any of those come to them, get them to come out? Like, especially Thanos. I mean, with the connections Thanos have, not to mention that half the life in the universe was wiped out, but they were apparently off doing whatever they were doing during that time, that I guess that we might find out in this movie what was going on and why they didn't. But that's a lot of the questions I've seen people asking about this.
Yeah, because right now it makes no sense. I think they're going to try to explain it, and I hope it's not going to be this cheap go-to response of, "Oh, we were just disheartened by the world," because we've heard this so many times. Like with Wonder Woman, it was, "Oh, I saw the horrors of humanity and I left," and that sort of didn't end up being true the later we went on because we saw her help. And then we also heard it with who?
We also, Captain Marvel was a good example for this, because her movie took place, in the 90s, and then she didn't decide to show up until Thanos. But like, why didn't she come back? Why didn't Fury have her come back for New York? Or if she was so powerful, or when Ultron is dropping a city out of the sky, do you think that could have, used some muscle into that?
But also we saw this example happen with the Martian Manhunter in the Snyder Cut, where he just out of nowhere appears at the end and says he was there all along, which he was. He was there in Man of Steel. What the heck was he doing in Man of Steel? Just chilling in the background as in the military. Then he wasn't doing anything during Batman versus Superman. And now in Justice League, he didn't help them fight Steppenwolf, and he just appears there at the end, how he was just offensively tacked on. I hope that sort of lazy explanation will not be the case here. And my theory would be something like, I don't know, some kind of intergalactic, maybe courtroom or something like that prohibited them from interacting with Earth, and maybe the moment Thanos died or something connected to that allowed them to have some kind of reason to come in. Maybe But that's the thing. Why would they come to Earth if the entire world was affected by the snap? That's what would be weird. So I think maybe it has something to do with maybe Thanos dying on Earth and
Well, I mean, Thanos in present day actually died on 5 years, whatever it was before everyone came back and they fought in
2023.
Endgame.
Well, he died in 2023
Well,
twice.
that was the 2014 version though. They got snapped away by Iron Man. If you
Yeah.
think about it, Thor chopped off the present day Thanos' head 5 years before all that happened.
Oh, right. That was 5 years before. You're right. Yeah, you're right.
So if they were gonna get alerted by something about Thanos being whacked off, then that would have been there long before that stuff went
Yeah.
on.
And as we know, this is the main events of this movie are probably going to happen after the events of Endgame because of the final line of dialogue in the trailer, which acknowledges the death of Iron Man and Captain America. So this is definitely happening after the event. So they're probably, it's almost a sure thing that they're coming in just as Thanos died. They didn't come before or anything. Speaking of Thanos, how is he connected to the Eternals? Because I know there's some kind of connection. I'm just not sure exactly what it is in the comic books.
Well, Thanos is actually technically an Eternal. He's actually kind of more of a deviant, I suppose, because he was ostracized because of his appearance being, kind of deformed looking and purple and all that stuff.
So he was
And
half
he's
deviant,
actually,
half Eternal?
he was a deformed Eternal, I suppose, which makes him a deviant because he's kind of he's technically he's kind of a mutant, like a mutant, not like us like an X-Men mutant, but more like a mutant deformed Eternal because he's actually the brother of Star Fox, who is not in this movie that I'm aware of, but he was an Eternal who's been a part of the Avengers and who's actually their father is like one of the big Eternals. So he's actually connected to them a lot because of that he is an Eternal, essentially. And his brother is an Eternal.
Okay. So are the Eternals all powerful in the comics as well? Or, well, yeah, they are, because, so I'm just confused because how do you go from Thanos, who's just like this purple Hulk with intelligence and experience, he's very powerful, but he's very limited. So how do you go from that sort of Eternal to this, which is a powerful god who can create nature, can change the fabric of, I don't know, can create machines out of nowhere. This is like a total different level than Thanos. So how do they explain that in the comic books?
Well, according to the Marvel Encyclopedia of Thanos' powers, it says that he can synthesize ambient cosmic energy for use in a variety of ways, from increasing strength to firing blasts. Also possesses a personal force field and other devices.
That's true.
Now, I don't know exactly. I don't remember every ability offhand because most of the time when you read Thanos in the comics, he has the Infinity Gauntlet. Yeah. So you don't see him like fighting a lot without it. I've read
the Jeff Lemire run, which I already forgot because Jeff Lemire writes kind of forgettable comics. That's besides the point because I know a lot of people like Jeff Lemire. But I remember him, especially interacting with Star Fox. He could shoot blasts and everything.
Obviously, it differs because we're kind of used to the Thanos from the MCU, which is they've kind of made him not that way because they have his backstory. He had a race of people on the planet called Titan, but in the comics, it's actually the moon of Titan around Saturn.
So in the comics, he doesn't live on Titan?
Well, he is on Titan, but it's like in the movies, they've made it a planet, like a separate planet, as opposed to the Eternals who were living on the moon of Titan.
Just like the Inhumans were living on the moon of Earth.
Our moon. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, that's interesting.
So anyway, so they've tweaked things in the movies and the comics, and so I don't know how if they'll tie in or even mention that he was kind of connected to them. So we'll just have to wait and see on that one.
I'm gonna assume
But
the
there is
answer is no.
definitely a connection in the comics.
But I think there has to be some kind of connection because otherwise, why would they just come out of nowhere? But I guess we'll see. That's my theory is that it's somehow connected to Thanos.
Throughout the years, we have never interfered.
The Crusades
That was
were
kind of like showing.
what was that?
I believe that.
The Spanish Inquisition. I have no idea. I'm spouting off random historical events.
Actually, I've heard someone say it was the Spanish Inquisition and not the Crusades, even though I assumed because of the Black Knight being in it that was gonna be like that could have been the Crusades because, and that's how they're gonna meet, and they're gonna be like the past part of Black Knight with like King Arthur and Merlin, because in the comics Cersei actually meets them in like when she's back in the day she meets them uh Merlin and Arthur and all those people back in Camelot era. And then I assume that could be how they connect Black Knight, Dane Whitman in present day, and how he's connected to the Eternals.
So I'm assuming the dagger will be somehow connected to all this stuff, and maybe that's how Black Knight comes in because he has history of, and because they gave them like a blade in the past, and what if this blade goes on from generation to generation? Someone steals it from one tribe to another, then comes invaders and they take the tribe, the daggers, and then it sort of just goes on through history and history. And maybe what if this is the dagger that's responsible for a lot of the atrocities happening in certain societies? Maybe that's why it's what's happening. And now we see like
possible.
A shot of Sprite in this very volcano land. What's she doing?
I don't know, but I remember hearing something about a volcano being significant, but I can't quite remember what it was.
Okay.
So now it looks like we're getting a little bit more present day kind of stuff after this.
Yeah, and she's crying, and we are getting like a bunch of feely touchy hugging here. Okay.
Until.
And okay, so this is some kind of barn. By the way, he looks.
No, he
looks weird.
This guy's name is Droog.
He looks like he just woke up with the drapes and he's just walking out of his bedroom or something.
I tell you, they have their work cut out for them because they are introducing like almost like 10 characters.
Okay.
You know, as part of the Eternals that we all have to learn in this movie.
And I know he can control minds, which will come into play. And
yes.
Look, more shots of hands. And
that is Gilgamesh and Athena, is what I've seen.
Okay, I was wondering whose hand was that. So
that's supposedly, I believe, Angelina Jolie's character, Athena. Yeah.
So this is the. Is this an acid?
Now we're back to this. Now we're back to this. Looks like where the volcano is erupting, I believe.
Okay.
It also kind of looks like the city that they originally helped build. So maybe the volcano was connected to that, and that's what this is one of the disasters that happens.
So we see them. We see them helping people throughout history. So there goes another contradiction. Then we see some kind of powers, and now they're like Power Rangers going to connect.
Now, this is actually a precedent from the comics. It's called the Unimine, which is basically kind of what it sounds like, and they're kind of like connecting into form one kind of conscious thing to like combine powers in their minds and all that stuff.
You know what?
So that's what's being displayed right here.
But it looks so weird, and I'm gonna get to why that looks weird. Later, like at the very end. Okay, what is this? The Ebony Blade?
That is not the Ebony Blade. That is just Thena's sword.
Okay, it's just a sword she uses. Another cool shot. Okay, and now we have a lover's relationship throughout the years. Aloha.
And now that's the part that I believe is going to turn into like a love triangle because they they're. I mean, they're. I didn't. I don't remember in the comics if they were together, but I know that from what I've heard and what I know from the comics about Black Knight, that Black Knight's going to get in between this right here. So, and so she's gonna have some. Ikaris is gonna have some, competition for her affections.
I mean,
So I don't know how
I can
that's
see
gonna last.
why. I can see why. And there she is in those clothes again. In the same desert plain. Weird. Okay. We're getting to... So, this is
Now,
weird.
This
is... Before we get to
Now
Bollywood, this is like something everyone just skips past because everyone wants to jump to Bollywood, but what's happening here? It's very quick.
That is a good question. That is a good question. It's like... It looks like they're touching them.
There we go. It's like turning into eyes.
It looks like...
It's a tree. Definitely
it kind of looks like a touching a tree, and they're using their powers. Well, you know that they used their powers to, transmute objects into water earlier, so that could be kind of what's happening here as well.
So what's up with the Bollywood number?
Now that's Kingo, and I don't know what is going on in that.
And now we have our triangle.
My boy complete. Black Knight, finally.
He looks very wimpy here. He's like, oh no. Doesn't look very imposing or anything. It's like a very typical Jon Snow face expression. She's my queen.
So, I've never watched Game of Thrones, so I can't comment on Jon Snow. But if you have, go ahead. But it is interesting that they got him to play another knight in this. And I hope that they don't screw up. My man Dane Whitman is one of my favorite characters.
So what's up with the story arc in the Marvel comics with the Avengers?
So when they're on this team together, there's actually a character called Proctor who comes in to fight the Avengers, who is actually a Black Knight from an alternate dimension, because multiverse. And he's trying to get Sersei because Cersei's been killed in these other dimensions, and he killed some of them in the other dimensions. It gets really confusing, and so Black Knight and Sersei fight him, and they end up leaving the universe to go some other universe and all this sort of stuff. But that's part of when I mentioned the Gian Josen, and they're kind of connected, even though at the time there was another love triangle going on because Dane was also into Crystal, the Inhuman, who was actually married to Quicksilver at the time. So it was a whole thing. And it's kind of confusing even when you read the whole story arc.
So it makes you wonder why she left the other guy for this guy.
Well, it shows actually that Cersei is a little more into Dane than Dane is to Cersei, but I don't know exactly how they'll do it in the movies, so that'll be interesting to see. But I just really hope they don't screw up Black Knight and that he gets some, obviously it's not his movie, but he gets some decent screen time.
And now I guess it's just random people looking at the weather.
I believe this is the same shot of what we just saw with Dane and Cersei where they were looking at.
So they're just hanging out randomly at a park with random people and suddenly something happens, I assume.
Most likely England, because that's where his castle is at.
They look like their clothes look like they're English. I don't know why. It's the coats. And
we get the shot with all of them in their costumes.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they look
comic accurate, but
no, they're not. Let's be real. The only one that somewhat
the only one that kind of looks like is Ikaris.
Exactly. And even then, it looks awful, to be honest. It's just not only the coloring, because he had red in his original costume, which looked really nice. This just looks plain. It's just like a blue and bits of yellow. Basically, this is like a race swapped, gender swapped minority swapped version of the
Well,
Eternals from the comics.
they've even had Kevin Feige basically came out and said that's exactly what they intended to do. They said, essentially, because no one knows who they are, they can do whatever they want,
Yeah,
which, they've said that they've done that with other people that they do know what they are, so that obviously that's never stopped them before. And this is
exactly.
basically all just so they can have diversity because none of these characters, I mean, for the most part, are all white, and they did Edge also gender swap Ajax in the front of Selma Hayek's character.
When I looked at Eternals, the only character I knew visually, because he kind of looked like Marvel Man or Miracle Man, is, Ikaris. He had like the blonde hair, and he doesn't even have that. And I think like from Thena to Kumail, so the purple guy, I think they like the actors look like they're very into their roles, whereas onwards from Icarus to the right, they look all very just look at each of them. This is my problem. None of them look like superheroes, to be honest. I have no idea what they're doing. Like, Cersei, I like the actress for Cersei, but look at her. She looks very uncomfortable. She's just like standing there like a twig. The little one is just a kid randomly out of nowhere. Was she like that in the comic books? Was she a tiny kid like in them?
Well, yeah, she was the young, like, Sprite, like her name suggests, the young one. So, yeah, that is kind of
Is she
fits that
forever
part.
young? Okay, so the next guy is like this oversized black guy who just stands so awkwardly it hurts to look at. Then there's this guy on the right who he's like, what is he wearing? What like if I imagine these godly beings, you have like the Lord of the Rings, for example. You have this Fellowship of the Ring, and you had this history in the beginning, and then you had like these kings, humans, and they were all very old, and they all looked very ruly, and you could really buy into it. But all of these guys, I cannot really bring myself to believe that all of them are supposed to be like these godly beings because they don't look like them. The only one that's like pulling it off is Angelina Jolie, and I think that's pretty much it. And the costumes aren't helping them, And on top of that, they've changed the characters. One of the characters is a mute, for example. One of them, the fast one, because she's a mute in real life. Well, um, I don't know. And now they're probably like changing their sexuality from what I'm understanding because one of the characters is gay. Like you said earlier, they are doing this. They did this before, but now I think because not a lot of people know about the characters, this is going to give them an excuse to basically deviate even more. Because before you had the deviations, but at least with the overall picture of the Marvel universe, it was sort of a tribute to the comic books. It was because we saw Raimi movies of Spider-Man, and even though it wasn't a one for one in a lot of cases, at least it got the essence of Spider-Man right. This is just like going in a completely different direction. Even though I haven't read Eternals, you can just put one to one and you can tell in this approach about how, oh yeah, we can now just change stuff because this is what Kevin Feige said: the popularity of the comics doesn't play into the popularity of the movies, which yeah, is true. And then he brought up Blade as an example, but you didn't race swap Blade to be a 15-year-old white guy with sunglasses in the sun. And he was still Blade from what I assume, even though you were able to create a franchise out of it. Same thing with, I don't know who else, Iron Man. You created a character that's popular, that was popular in the comic books to an extent, but not to the movie going audiences. But you were still able to be faithful. I don't see that here.
Well, it definitely shows that the MCU is definitely, they're even more so if they weren't already before, they are going straight for the general audience, or so what they think the general audience wants. And they're not making these movies for comic book fans, like they're making them for other people.
Well,
You know,
I
I
think they're
don't feel like they
making.
prioritize those
Yeah,
people that much.
I think they want to make movies for activists and for clout and for social media coverage, and they expect everyone to go along with it, basically, because they've already built up an audience and they can just do whatever at this point. And I think what we're going to be seeing with the Marvel Cinematic Universe is what I thought they were doing. And then the announcements came of a lot of these movie titles just recently, and it just reaffirmed my thoughts. Like the sequel to Black Panther, it's not going to be about T'Challa. It's going to be about Wakanda and all these side characters. No one really. I mean, I didn't like them. Characters like Shuri. I don't want to watch a movie with Shuri in it. That's like I don't want this version of Shuri to be the main Black Panther, or I don't care about. I care about T'Challa the most. Why don't you just recast the actor? But I guess you're not going to do that. Then you're doing the same thing with Captain Marvel, maybe for the better, because apparently Marvel has no faith in her, even though they were really trying to push her. Now they're really going to branch off and put Monica and Kamala Khan, and they haven't even interacted really in the comics. So Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, and Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. Now in the movies, they're going to be like working together. Now they're going to be adapting these stories from a Marvel era like Jane Foster Thor, like Captain America Sam Wilson, where it was this very diversity pushed era that didn't really work with the fans and is right now contributing to a lot of people just not reading the modern comic books from Marvel and DC. And they're really going into that direction, not only with characters we know, but the characters we don't know. And it's just, I think it's going to be a very messy, and they're going to, well, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes, because to their credit, they have an audience and they will eat up anything. So maybe they will be more successful than the hardcore comic book fans were, because with the case of Marvel Comics through 2015 to even now, who knows?
That's definitely a good point.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it performed well, so it didn't really stop them from, it's not going to stop them from going more into this direction. And that show got really political. Now you see these actors, directors, now they're all using this exact same language, talking about how, oh yeah, we want to include diversity. The actor for Shang-Chi, which I think that movie looks actually pretty decent, he's like, oh yeah, I want to do this movie because it's a great platform. And in this, like, why are you using this movie as a platform? Why aren't you using it to tell an interesting story, or just capture something cool on the screen and for people to enjoy? Why are you trying to make some kind of why are you trying to use it as some kind of soapbox for you, or some kind of message? And that's what's basically happening here with the Eternals, and we'll see how much of that will affect once we see it.
It's like they do it just for the sake of doing it, as opposed to, there's so many characters out there if they actually went into comics that they could find that are diverse without having to make these. And if the thing that I think turns people off is not because it's a certain race or gender character, it's because that's becomes their defining trait. Like,
Yeah.
This character is black, or this character is a woman, or this character is gay, and that's their trait, and they make sure you know it every page or every shot, and that's what gets on people's nerves, I think. And it's not that because they use these characters that are diverse. So what they need to do is to focus more on the stories, and sure, have the character be this diverse character, but that's not like, the only thing about that character that makes the character great.
The thing is, how many characters are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and probably more with Black Knight and who knows who else. How are you going to really know these characters other than what their ethnicity is? If they can speak or not. It's
they have their work cut out for them, and being able to, in the 2.5 hour whatever movie, to try to introduce these characters, all their lore, and make us care about these characters enough, going forward just in this one movie with so many just even presented right here. Not to mention, like you said, all the other characters that are probably going to be introduced as well. So it has a tall order, but we'll see what happens. Yes.
The Eternals, or I guess not. And this is where we get the last bit of the trailer.
Thank you for this. Oh, you're welcome.
So now that Captain Rogers and Iron Man are both gone, who do you think's gonna lead the Avengers?
I could lead them.
As everyone says, the cringe laugh scene.
Yeah, it's probably a joke, but who knows? Maybe he is going to lead the Avengers from now on. Which, honestly, I think that's going to be better
he
than...
won't lead the Avengers.
What?
He won't lead the Avengers.
I think he's a
a
better
white
choice
man,
than...
So I know he's not gonna.
I think
he's not gonna be in charge.
I think he would have been a better choice than Carol Danvers or the new Sam Wilson fake out guy. Yeah, or Spider-Man. Oh gosh, no, not him. I would rather...
To be honest, with the characters that are left in the MCU, I kind of thinking I would put Doctor Strange in charge.
He seems like he's
like
on
the
top
one
of
that knows
everything.
what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Or Thor.
Well, that's just,
I don't understand why the King of Asgard, I guess not. He's now given that to Valkyrie for whatever reason. This film is not yet rated. Probably R-rated if you ask me. And
even though they've already said, practically said Blade's not going to be R, but they're going to make the Eternals R.
Yeah.
It definitely has a lot of work to do from what I've seen to introduce and get all these characters in. And with the kind of confusing lore and not many people knowing about it, it'll be tough, but based on what the MCU usually does, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who just absolutely love it, but I just can't really know. I honestly, the only reason I was not cared about this movie, the only reason I cared about this movie is when they said Black Knight was going to be in it, and if they screw him up, I'm going to be mad. So that's where I stand on this right now.
I am not only just turned off by the complete changes they've made, because why just find characters who are already diverse and stuff, and don't use them for your stupid politics. But on top of that, you have now like this trailer. Like, what are they doing in this frame? They're just like touching and very touchy-feely. Well, with them, I understand why, but you have several shots in this trailer where just like touching hands. And I think the only cool part about this movie that everyone is going to agree on is, I think, when we get to see like these Celestials. I hope we get to see them, because there was this one promo footage that leaked with all these like robotic creatures that look very Jack Kirby, and I think they might transform into that from my predictions, and I think that will be like the only cool thing from this movie.
Well, the best look we've got the Eternals was in Guardians of the Galaxy in that flashback by the Collector, where you see the
Celestials, you mean?
Yes, the Celestials. That was like one of the best shots we got, and so that's pretty. They were pretty comic accurate, for if I remember correctly, looking from how they're drawn. So
yeah,
maybe we'll get to see them in here, considering how much of a history they have with the Eternal.
So yeah, I think this is a good place to end this discussion. We've gone on for long, but I think it was worth it. So hopefully you enjoyed our discussion here. And if you like, make sure to like and subscribe. Definitely subscribe for more cool videos. And if you want to see more, or if you want to have us talk about something else, let us know. We are open to we're open to movies, video games, TV shows, cartoons, comic books, anything we're willing to discuss. Jesse, any last words before your death?
Yeah, well, no, I think we're good. We'll head on out, and we'll hopefully try to make some more videos. We've been a little, not done much recently because of life and all that, but we're hopefully going to pump out some more stuff and get the content coming, so stay tuned for that.
So with that said, goodbye.